Good morning. It's December 26th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. When our founding fathers created the United States, they envisioned a nation that would be free from the oppression of a king and one where people could speak their minds. They were so adamant in this goal that the First Amendment to the Constitution addressed the issue of free speech in no uncertain terms. It reads, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances, end quote. Today we've seen the left make multiple attacks on the freedom of speech. In local schools and on college campuses, they've been adopting policies on what students can say and do. They force them to adopt certain words and pronouns, even if they go against their own personal beliefs. To violate these authoritarian rules could lead to termination, suspension, or even accused of hate speech. Democrats thought they could have the upper hand in this election, and they were preparing to go full throttle in enacting their restrictions on what you as an American citizen could say and do. When the Democratic Party's out-of-touch leadership thought Kamala Harris would propel them to victory, they set about making plans to silence opposition to their agenda once in office. At the Democratic National Convention, Senator Chuck Schumer promised sweeping changes to elections, voting, and the campaign finance if Democrats won control of the Congress and the White House. All of these efforts would slant the political playing field further in the left's favor. Among the bills was legislation that would strip Americans of their privacy when supporting nonprofit groups that speak out on hot-button issues like abortion, crime, the border, or extreme gender politics. The importance of this provision should not be underestimated. The left calls it transparency when they publicly expose a private citizen's personal information, including their name and home address. But Americans know it better as doxing. They also know the purpose is not good government, but power politics. Exposing donors allows the left to build enemies lists and harass anyone who backs the wrong cause. Kamala Harris, who co-sponsored the Disclose Act in the Senate, has her own long record of attacking conservative donors and journalists. As California Attorney General, she demanded that nonprofits expose their confidential donor list to her office, which led to lawsuits and a rebuke from the U.S. Supreme Court. The First Amendment protects the right to give privately, as the justices reminded her. But none of that has stopped the Democrats and liberals of the nation from continuing their attacks on anyone that dares to speak out against their agenda. After the fight over Obamacare sparked a massive conservative movement known as the Tea Party, the left painted the targets on the backs of the organizations and donors at its heart. IRS bureaucrats began grilling conservative groups about their activities and intentionally slow-walked their applications for nonprofit status. The massive targeting campaign succeeded in suppressing grassroots conservative activism in the run-up to the 2012 elections, where Democrats made gains. It's also emboldened the left in attempts to stifle any speech that is contrary to their political views. They don't seem to understand what the First Amendment's all about, and yet they want to challenge people for simply stating their opinions. Such challenges to the First Amendment began around 10 years ago with the emergence of the critical social justice, that's the woke movement, which sought to promote equity according to group identity through authoritarian means. In March of 2018, an article appeared on the website of the American Civil Liberties Union, which noted that by this point it was common for leftist activists to, quote, call for lower legal protection for speech, end quote. The writer concluded that such calls were misguided, describing the First Amendment as our most powerful tool to keep the government from regulating the conversations that spark change in the world. But you wouldn't know that listening to Democratic politicians. Today we have prominent politicians actively casting doubt on the true nature of the First Amendment. They apparently don't understand the importance of letting people speak and publish freely. Or perhaps they're just letting their despotic inclinations come to the surface. Just this month, John Kerry told the World Economic Forum that, quote, the First Amendment stands as a major block, end quote, to curbing news outlets that might have, quote, an agenda. Kerry might be surprised to know that the constitutional framers created a free press precisely to keep wannabe authoritarians from doing such curbing. News outlets are welcome to have agendas today, just as they did in the early days of the nation. Well, not to be outdone, Hillary Clinton joined the chorus of voices ripping into the free expression principle. She, too, is a former senator, secretary of state, and presidential candidate. Clinton hit the daily double in the last month, first calling for Americans who spread propaganda, according to her, during an election to be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged. She later told an interviewer that Congress should take steps to regulate social media, allowing the government to more actively manage content, or else we lose total control. And that's the key word, total control. But having the government lose control of messaging is exactly what the First Amendment was designed to do. In the vice presidential debate earlier this year, Tim Walz demonstrated his lack of understanding for the First Amendment in his recent televised debate with J.D. Vance. Walz incorrectly claimed that the First Amendment does not protect misinformation or threatening or hate speech. We are seeing it even today in the run-up to the change of power in the Congress and the White House. Democrats are attempting to pounce on every word by a nominee or Trump himself and portray it as some threat to democracy. Yet President Trump's opponent will not simply stand by and watch as he dismantles their carefully crafted censorship machine. Controlling who gets to speak and what can be said is essential to the left's dominance over our institutions. They will not give up their power without a fight. At the Democratic Convention, again, Schumer promised those sweeping changes. He was going to change everything, and all those would slant in his favor. And so here we are. The left calls it this transparency, and actually it's not. It'll be up to both Republicans and the rest of us, the average American citizens, to stand up for our freedom to express our thoughts and views. The quote, "I may not agree with you, what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," has never been more important than it is today. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.